All right. Welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a fumbling discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. And thank you for being patient while I figure out my controls back here. I don't really know what was going on there. I've got a video that doesn't seem to want to play anymore all of a sudden. And I was like, okay, so there's that. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, we're back for another day. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about a couple of different things today. Doing I'm on number 27 of my random dad musings, which kind of is the whole podcast in general. But this is where, like, rather than focus on a single topic for the day, I actually just kind of grab multiple topics somewhere between, I don't know, 3 and 5. Just depends on how much time I want to spend on them. So this first thing came across my wire and I was like, "Oh, that's very interesting." Let's see. Yeah, that Liberty lady says, "Not sure what happened with the intro. That was weird." Yeah, you can go ahead and blame your host for that. Uh, I was I was working on some things yesterday to try to improve the flow of the show, and I broke something and I didn't realize it until like this morning. And when I was like, "Hey, why isn't this playing?" And then shows me on the screen and it's going back and forth. So I apologize for that, folks. We'll get that worked out. Anyway, we're going to talk about Dr. Drew, talking about getting outraged on the internet with engagement farming. And then we're going to talk about drones and wildfires. Found some interesting things there. So, what do we got for Dr. Drew here? Well, this is let me show you this series of tweets that Dr. Drew made. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jeopardize my show once again. So Dr. Drew got in trouble on YouTube and he took to Twitter to criticize it. So I'm going to play some of the clips, just like 30 seconds of clips that he posted that he got in trouble for. But first, let's pull up what he said on Twitter, because as a content creator, I think it's a value add to make sure that I support other content creators. And when I mean support them, like, I want people to say what they have to say, even if I hate it. Okay. Like, that's like, period. You could be a commie. Okay. A straight up, and I don't mean commie in the sense where we all say, oh, so and so is a commie because they believe in this one idea that I don't like. I mean, you could be an actual, outright, altogether self avowed communist. And I want you to have a YouTube channel. I mean, I don't necessarily want you to have one, but if you have one, I want you to be able to speak your piece. And then if I don't like what you're saying, I can, tune out, or I can criticize you back and I can say, hey, look at this bumbling fool said. So, in support of Dr. Drew and what happened, we're going to go through what happened to him. We're going to talk about it. So here's this tweet. He said, "This weekend, YouTube creators accused me of spreading, quote, medical misinformation," end quote, and took down two videos with an MD, medical doctor, and a lawyer. I've been a board certified physician for over 40 years, two times YouTube's existence. So let's take a closer look at the timestamps they're saying harmful. Now, when we're talking about this, let's keep in mind that during COVID, it was everything people, like, all people could say was listen to the experts, talk to your doctor, trust doctors. Are you a doctor, DL? Then why are you talking? Okay, I'm not a doctor. Dr. Drew, whether you like him or not, is a board certified doctor. He has the credentials that we were told he is supposed to have in order to discuss this kind of stuff, right? Like, I don't have them, so therefore I wasn't supposed to. I don't agree with that. But that was the argument that's being made. So now, what we should expect to see, but we won't, are all those same people coming out and saying, you know what? I said during the pandemic that you should listen to doctors and they have a voice, yada, yada, yada. I don't agree with Dr. Drew here, but and to be consistent with my prior comments, I am supporting his right to come out and not have his YouTube channels pulled down. No, that's not what's going to happen. Why? Because most of those people that were saying that, they just really wanted to be authoritarian and they wanted to exert control over people. They weren't really interested in you actually talking to your doctor. Because if I had come to them and said, well, my doctor said that I shouldn't take the vaccine, then guess what? They would be like, "What?" And if I said, the doctor says that I'm like, let's imagine it's 2021, middle of 2021, right? And I'm arguing with somebody and they're like, "Well, did you talk to your doctor about the vaccine?" And I go, "Well, actually, I did talk to my doctor, and both my doctor and I agreed that I'm not at risk and there was no need for me to take it." They would flip out. They would be like, "Oh, you need a new doctor, blah, blah." Right? And I know this because of all the things that they did. Like sometimes you can speculate based on people's behavior. Right? It's kind of like when, a husband's like, "Well, I know my wife," or a wife might say, "I know my husband, and this is what he's probably going to say." Right? Like once you get to know, once you get to know somebody well enough, or you have enough evidence, you can kind of speculate. So yes, they would probably have said that. All right, so then he goes on, and he's got a few tweets here. So let me see here. Where are we? There we go. So then he goes on. He says, violation number one, medical misinformation at the 22-minute and 52-second mark. Dr. Kelly Victory shares her professional opinion about young people who were injured by mRNA side effects, saying, quote, the vast majority of the people who have been injured are young, healthy people who are under the age of 50 who had fundamentally zero risk from COVID itself. They all got COVID. 98% of the population has documentation they've had COVID. These are people who would have been fine if they were just left alone, end quote. So that's part of what got him in trouble. Okay. And now these are either factual or not factual statements. Either the vast majority of people were injured who were injured were young and healthy people under the age of 50, or they were not. So we can verify these facts, right? This information. This isn't even a rise to the level of somebody saying something questionable that the everyday average person would have trouble identifying, right? Like you can go and look up these facts and say, okay, well, who were these people that were right? We should be able to. Now the second part of that statement, where they said these people would have been fine if they were just like that's an opinion, right? And that's a little bit harder to verify, but nonetheless, it is coming from a doctor, a board certified doctor. The two people on screen, Dr. Kelly and me, are licensed board certified physicians who completed medical school decades ago. I was chief resident at Huntington Hospital, an assistant clinical professor in medicine and psychiatry at Keck USC, and a director of addiction services at Los Encinas Hospital for 25 years. Do I agree with everything Dr. Victory says? I do not. And she wouldn't hesitate to say the same about me, often on my own show. But I have a commitment to free speech and open debate between dissenting experts. It's not medical misinformation for a licensed doctor to provide an opinion on a broadcast. I agree. It is not medical misinformation to do that. Like they're saying their opinion. And it's to me when I read this, it's an opinion. And there's some information where we could look and say, is that factual or not? All right, let's go. Let's see the next part. Violation number two: medical misinformation at the 38 minute and 21-second mark. Attorney Warner Mendenhall of Akron law firm shares his professional opinion and details about a case he's fighting. Quote, I believe about 500,000 people have died from taking the shot. We are currently representing one of my clients who is extremely ill. Her spinal cord has been damaged. She's been having trouble breathing. She goes by the coerced nurse. End quote. Back to Dr. Drew saying, he's like, do I agree with everything Mendenhall says? I do not. I haven't seen convincing evidence that 500,000 people died from the shot. I agree with him. I haven't seen that information either. I haven't seen anything that suggests that, but it is not medical misinformation for an attorney to discuss the details of an ongoing case, even if those details do not align with the CDC's preferred narrative at the time. Example, the Tuskegee study, Guatemalan STD experiments, Willowbrook Wi- wi- Willowbrook hepatitis study, Camp Lejeune water contamination, et cetera, et cetera. So these were things that had a narrative at one time, and they now have a different narrative. So it is not medical misinformation for someone to state their belief that a large number of people were harmed by a medical product or study. That is his opinion based on evidence from his cases. Now, I want you to think about how many times have you seen on TV it, where it says something like, um, did you do this or were you in this particular place, 20 years ago, you might have a you might have a claim against such and such, right? Like there, it's like the lawyers put out an ad seeking people and saying like, "Hey, were you in this place? Did you experience this thing? You may be able to be part of this action lawsuit." Happens all the time, right? Like they get a hunch that something is, they've got some evidence that suggests that there's some liability to be had, and so then they go and chase it, right? Right, and I'm not calling them ambulance chasers at this point. I'm just saying like they pursue it. Like this happens. And that's exactly what's going on here. This lawyer's like, "Look, I think this evidence um says this thing, and so therefore I'm going to pursue it and I'm going to talk about it." So he's just basically doing what we've already seen done for decades. So that's it. He's not doing anything. He's not doing anything out of the ordinary. It's very new. I'm sorry. It's very it's not new. All right, next one. So then he goes, "How do I get these warnings removed? It's simple. I must attend YouTube's re-education training and be a good boy for 90 days, or else they will delete my channel and its 1,000 plus videos." Now I went through something similar where I think I ran afoul of alleged copyright infringement. I think I'm not. I've never really clearly identified what I did wrong exactly. I think it was just used material and it got flagged and they pulled it down. But I don't understand why I got pulled down because it's not very clear where the line is for somebody who's commenting that it's fair use and to say, okay, well, this is fair use. You're allowed to use it. This is not. So it's not exactly clear to me. But I've had this same thing happen, and I refused. I was like, I will have my channel pulled long before I go and attend your little training because that's just absurd. I'm a political commentator. Now, unlike Dr. Drew, I do not have, this professional background to call upon and say, "Hey, I'm a professional. I know when and how to talk about these topics in a particular way." Right? I'm just a commentator, so I'm like, I'm giving you my opinion straight up. And so for me, I look at it, and this is the reason I'm talking about it. If this can happen to Dr. Drew, somebody who is what we were told, one of the experts, somebody that's had the medical training. They know how to talk about this kind of stuff. They know how not to talk about this kind of stuff, right? They know when to speculate. They know when to, to not speculate. They know this stuff, right? Like they've been trained. If this can happen to him, what can happen to me? Let's continue on. What else did he have to say here? So then he goes on. These aren't the first warnings or strikes I've received from YouTube. The first time this happened, my producer got on the phone with them and made peace. It's hard to moderate billions of hours of content, and YouTube will make some mistakes. I agree. Like, I get it. I don't disagree with YouTube trying to moderate. They should moderate, but I think they need a clear path for people like Dr. Drew and even people like me to say, "Hey, I think you got this wrong. Let's get this rectified quickly." But when it happened again last year, my producer politely asked them if I could do a quote provider to provider call from one physician to another so I could have a clinical conversation with the person on their side who is judging my interviews. The hallowed YouTube moderator who graduated medical school, spent time in residency, and treated enough patients to confidently claim my professional opinion is harmful enough to justify censorship. Of course, that person couldn't speak to me because that person does not exist. YouTube doesn't have physicians on their moderation team. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's interesting. Like, here they are moderating and saying, you can't say that. And we know that you're wrong in saying that. And then it's like, well, okay, who are you? I mean, do they got Sanjay Gupta on their side saying, yeah, I like Dr. Drew, but turns out on this one, he's got it wrong? No, that's not what happens. A lot of it is automated, and I find that to be a problem. And if you think the moderation via automation is going away, let me introduce you to AI. It's not. It's just going to get more clever. All right, last comment from Dr. Drew. YouTube is free to stay on the wrong side of history. I really hate that phrase. It just kind of irks me when people say wrong side of history. Their house, their rules. But I do agree with this. Like it is their house. They can do whatever they want. But it's times like these when I'm especially grateful that Elon Musk brought free speech back to the public square. Mostly. Both Ask Dr. Drew episodes are still available on X, and I refuse to delete even 1 second of them to appease Google's unqualified, unlicensed, untrained, unidentified censors. I agree with him. And I would refuse. I'm not like if I've actually done something wrong, like maybe I used music that I wasn't supposed to. And now, mind you, I am not a big fan of intellectual property, but the world we live in and the agreement that I made when I signed up for YouTube, was to say like, hey, certain things you can't do. So fine. That I will accept. And in that case, and I've had that come up where I've used music that I thought was licensed and really wasn't. And I had to go back and forth and figure things out. So I removed it, right, as a courtesy, you know. But when it comes to just regular commenting, like giving your opinion, I'm not budging. And I don't think Dr. Drew should either. I don't think anybody should budge because the whole point of being a content creator, the whole point of commenting on the news of the day, social topics, whatever, is that you're giving your opinion. And the only thing that needs to be understood with the audience, between the audience and me, is what credentials do I have to make the comments that I'm making? So if I come on the air and I say that I'm a doctor and I say I've had some sort of training, and it turns out that, I read one medical book that a friend who went to medical school lent me, well, then, yeah, I'm misrepresenting myself. And in that particular case, that would be fraud. And so, therefore, YouTube would be right to punish me because I am misleading the audience about who I am. Now, if I get on the air and I say, hey, um, this thing, whatever this thing is, and then I point out my evidence, I think YouTube should generally leave it alone because people can just determine, hey, is he being factual or is he not? What should we do? Should we tune in more or should we just let this guy go and let him ramble off into the wind and speak to nobody? So let's get to some of those videos, those 2 videos that he's got, because I'm going to play them in solidarity with him. And if YouTube comes at me, well, then that's the price we pay. But this, to me, this is how we create a better society. We rally around people when the powers that be are wrong. And sometimes you do a little protest. So, in as much as I can, I will be protesting YouTube's censorship because I think it's inappropriate. I think they should back up. I think they should focus on actual crimes. Like if there's actual, like if somebody's posting, things with children that are illegal. You know what I'm talking about. If they're posting that, go get them, hit them hard, get the police involved, all that stuff, right? If somebody's using music that they don't belong, I'm like, fine. I'm not going to ask you to go get them. I'm not going to point them out. But if you do, fair, right? That's the world we live in. And we haven't come anywhere close to terms with intellectual property. If somebody's misrepresenting who they are, then yes, go get them, punish them for being fraudulent. But otherwise, let people be. All right, so let's play this video here. Maybe. Oops, hit the wrong button there. How about that?
And the real tragedy with this, Drew, is that the vast majority of the people who've been injured are young, healthy people, people who were under the age of 50, who had
Yeah.
fundamentally zero risk from COVID itself. They all
Yeah.
got COVID. 96%, 98% of the population has documented and well known that they had COVID. Okay. These are people who would have done
least once.
fine if they'd just been left alone. But instead,
Yes.
they were maimed, many of them against their better judgment, against their best,
Yeah.
interests. They could, they had to do it to keep their jobs, to go to school, to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so what you
All right, so that's the end of that clip, and you can see here if you're looking at the screen, um, it's the YouTube, showing him the clip, and it says medical misinformation, and it says content that poses a serious risk of egregious harm by spreading medical misinformation about currently administered vaccines that are approved and confirmed to be safe and effective by local health authorities and the World Health Organization isn't allowed on YouTube. Now, again, it's their platform. They can do whatever they want with it. But I can come by and say, "You know what? I think you're making a serious mistake here." And I think in some sense, they're violating this idea that certain information or certain content is harmful. And let me see if I can't phrase this in a way that makes sense. So they're not actually doing it, but they're saying what Dr. Drew is doing here is harmful. But if you call something harmful that really isn't harmful, then you are the harmful person, right? Like you're the problem. And so in this particular case, I would say Dr. Drew is not the problem. They're having a conversation. There are thousands upon probably millions of podcasts where people bring on a guest and they talk about all kind of things. Experts don't always agree on things. They disagree, right? And that's how we get to better ideas. We have these conversations. Um, and at this particular point, there's really not a big push for vaccines, right? Not like it once was, not like, during COVID. Um, and people are much more free to be skeptical about it. You don't have to have one necessarily to go to work now. You don't have to have one to, you don't have to wear a mask to go to the grocery store. Like a lot of these things are over, except for YouTube. All right, so let's take a look at the second video. Play that one also in a little bit of solidarity there.
I believe about 500,000 people have died from taking the shot. We're currently representing people. One of my clients, unfortunately, is extremely ill. Her spinal cord has been damaged. Her diaphragm no longer works properly. She's having trouble breathing, and she's 40 years old. And she took it because of her job. That's a lady named Danny Baker, by the way. She goes by Course Nurse on Twitter, and she's a fantastic client to have, and we're going to try to make a point with that.
Okay. So it's an attorney expressing his opinion based on an actual case. And this happens all the time. How many times has mainstream media brought on some attorney to talk about a case that they are currently pursuing? And that attorney will give his opinion, his or her opinion on the case and where the case is going to go. How many times has mainstream media brought an attorney on to talk about a case they're not involved in and to give their opinion, their professional opinion about where this case is going and what we can expect? Happens all the time. That's exactly what's going on here. There is an actual case, and he was talking about his court case where he believes this evidence is going to take it. It was completely justified. Completely. And it was, and more than just justified. Both of those clips are exactly what has been happening for decades. It just so happens it's a taboo topic. And so YouTube hasn't gotten themselves in line yet. That's all that's happened. YouTube is behind the times, which is weird because they're a content platform that regularly updates. They should be ahead of everything. Not even like not even playing games like maybe Mark Zuckerberg is, who's like, "Oh, well, now we've got a new administration in. I'm going to play ball with this one." YouTube could just be like, "Hey, we're in a different place now, right? And we're going to treat things differently." They could do exactly what they did in 2020, between 2020 and you know what? Well, since then, right? They could do the same thing. They could be like, "Hey, we're in a different place. Some of these things maybe we don't, you know." But I would argue they should back off entirely. All right. Let's get to some comments here really quickly, and then we'll take a little bit of an intermission, and then get back to some of the stories of the day. So let me pull this up, and let's take a look at what some of y'all are saying in the comments. Hopefully, some good stuff here. Joe Nu says, "Finally, DL in a button shirt. Couldn't watch that disrespectful Senator Fetman Fetterman talking about a fail bill while wearing a hoodie." That's too funny. Yesterday, so if you're tuning in today and you weren't tuned in yesterday, or you're new to the show, yesterday I showed up in a hoodie, a red hoodie, because I was running behind and I didn't have time to iron a shirt. And so today I'm in my general, my the standard wardrobe that I normally wear. And so yesterday Joe's like, he saw it, and apparently YouTube needs to censor me when I show up all frumpy looking. So there's that. Yes, Joe, I'm back, and I'm wearing what I was supposed to wear, so I look professional. If you're not going to have a medical degree and you're going to talk about things, you're not going to have a lawyer degree, you should at least show up in a button-up shirt. Technically, it's a button-up shirt. I said button down yesterday, I think, but it's actually button up. I don't know if you know that. Button down is when the buttons are on the collar, and then just a button up is when there's no buttons. So this is a button-up shirt, technicality there. But so yeah, I showed up wearing the hoodie, but normally I am wearing one of these. And if you're going to talk about these kind of topics, you should look kind of presentable so that people think, "Oh wow, he didn't go to college, but he looks smart." Or for you British folks out there, he's smartly dressed. So yes, I'm a smartly dressed chap today. All right, let's see what else. That Liberty lady says, "I think what this is saying is a producer of the Dr. Drew show. It's impossible to go back and through so much content to see what the issue was." Yeah, kind of. But also, I mean, he's got 1,000 episodes. Like, surely he's going to talk about something taboo, right? And then going back through them, it's just the whole thing is absurd. That's why Rumble rules. Yes, Rumble is so much better. I can count on Rumble to not be like, "Oh, you said naughty things, we're taking your stream down," which has happened on YouTube. So YouTube, get your act together. Let's see here. Um, that Liberty lady. That's why Larry Sharp will say stuff like the stick versus the vaccine because of YouTube algorithm. He's very careful with trigger words. Well, I'm not. This. I'm not. This reminds me of remember Eminem back in the day, and he was like, in one of his songs, he's like, "Will Smith doesn't have to swear to sell records. Well, I do. So F him and F you." That's kind of like, I'm not saying F you to Larry Sharp. I like Larry Sharp. He's a great guy. But like, he can use euphemisms for words. I will not. And we're just going to take it where it goes. Like, and to each their own. That's cool. Like, some people will want to use euphemisms and kind of fly under the radar a little bit. And other people like me are going to be a little bit more brazen. And then we have people like Dr. Drew who are just going to be like, "Look, I'm qualified to talk about this. Are you? Are you qualified to tell me that I'm not qualified to talk about this?" So, all right. Um, so that's my little rant there on Dr. Drew. All right. Hey folks, do me a favor. If you enjoy this show, I want you to hit that like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. And if you want to support the show, I want you to head over to libertydad.locals.com, and I want you to sign up there. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage with supporters of the show and discuss topics that you want me to discuss. Maybe it's a response video that you'd like to see, or maybe you want me to talk about the latest meme that's come out, or whatever. Hey, whatever you want me to talk about on the show, that's where we're going to have that conversation. You can help drive this show, and I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. So go to libertydad.locals.com, sign up there. It'll be fun. Now, I believe you can actually sign up for free and be part of the community, but you'll have limitations. So you can go and try it out there, and let me know. And if I've this is a new venture, so if I've made a mistake, if I've erred, I'll correct myself. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. So if you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes will air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever one works best for dads. Because I do understand that some of you guys got to go to work in the morning. I work from home, so I'm very fortunate that I can do the show here in my office and then literally step on over and dive right into work. But I understand some of you got to go and be in an office, or maybe you work in a trade and you got to go out. You've got to go somewhere. You got to leave the house. I get it. So we'll have an evening show for you guys. All right, let's get back to the second half of the show. So, Libs of TikTok is recycling old news. Now, this is one of the things that I find really, really irritating on social media. And it's when somebody posts something, and I've seen it all the time. I'm seeing it more and more lately about news stories. It used to be more like social stuff. So you would see this video of two people maybe fighting, and some account would be like, "Who was wrong?" And then like everybody's like arguing about it, and then you're like, but I'm looking at the video and I'm like, why is this video so grainy? And why does it look like it was recorded on a Nokia phone? And so I started getting wise to it. And I said, oh, people are they're farming for engagement, which is fine. I mean, that's the whole point of social media. You're trying to get engagement. But I find it annoying when people go dig up stories that are like last year, not so bad, but once you get longer than that, unless there's a relevant reason to bring it up, like maybe the story is, a similar story has popped up. That's cool. Like, okay, bring up this story that's relevant. But just out of thin air, just to bring up a story just randomly, like why? So Libs of TikTok did that. I don't know if they do it all the time, but they did this time. Um, and one of the comments had suggested like this video that people were outraged about was from 2019. So I did a little digging and I found out, sure enough, that was the case. So let me show you the post that they made. So here's the post on the screen. I'll read it for folks that are just listening. It says Congressman Tim McBride, a man pretending to be a woman, explains to young kids that doctors can help them because transgender help them become transgender, and it's quote good. And it's got a picture of it's actually Sarah McBride. They're just needling at somebody unnecessarily, and it is Congresswoman. We'll get to that in just a second. And so she's reading this book called Jazz and Friends, and I'm not familiar with the book and I don't really care. But I looked at this picture and I was like, oh, wow, okay. And they posted this yesterday, January 13th at 4:10 p.m. You can see at the very bottom of the screen, it says that it's got 1.5 million views. Wow. And so at first I was like, wow, like this is still happening? Like that's crazy. And if you look further, you'll find that there's over 3,000 comments, over 4,000 reposts and quotes, 12,000 likes. Now, I'm not throwing shade at Libs of TikTok for getting engagement. That's not like fine. You're a big account. I guess you earned it, whatever. But I am going to throw shade a little bit at them for digging up something from 2019 because, like, why? What's going on? So let's take a look at the clip that they posted, the actual clip, and then we'll learn a little bit more about this.
Went with the doctor, and the doctor said that she she's a girl, and everyone should see her and treat her like a girl, right? Which is to say that they should call her Jazz, and they should treat her with respect and be nice to her. But can I ask you one more question? So that journey that she had from people thinking she was a boy, and the fact that Jazz knew she was a girl, to her parents and her friends accepting her as the girl that she is, that journey is called being transgender. And like Jazz said, that makes her a little different from some of the other kids. And Jazz at the end talks about how being different is good, right?
Okay. So, in general, as a rule of thumb, yes, being different is, I don't know if I would say good, but it's fine, right? Like, I went to school and there were kids there that were different for one reason or another. We had the goth kids, we had the punk rockers. I went to a school that had a lot of kids that were into country music and farming and stuff like that because I graduated from a high school that was in a more rural area. Right, when I went to a more city, not quite inner city, but a city-based public school, I met people there that reflected, various just various types of people, right? Like, so yeah, different is fine. No big deal. Do I have an issue with people reading transgender books to kindergartners? Yeah, I do. Because I just don't think you need to. I think you can wrap it all up and just say, some people are different. Don't be mean. Like what I tell my son, we don't sit down and I'm not trying to figure out, okay, what are all the different types of kids that he might run into? I don't care. Like, be nice to people, especially other kids. He's 5. It actually comes pretty easy to him. Right? Like, and maybe I don't know where I don't know where the standard is or where the average is, but I can tell you right now, in his current class, his 2 best friends, my son is Asian, but his 2 best friends are, one's white, one's black. Okay, cool. I don't even know that he realizes that one's white or black. I mean, he might notice, but I don't think he really like. I don't, it's one of those things where it's like he probably notices, and you could ask him, and he would know, but he doesn't. It's not on the top of his mind. He's not thinking about it. He's just like, this is my friend. We have fun playing. At his preschool, the majority of his friends were Indian, right? That just happened to be who he had in class. Okay. He had Indian friends. Great. When we go to the park, his criteria for friends is pretty simple. Or I say friends, but because if he plays with a kid for 5 minutes, that's his friend. But his criteria is very simple. Will you play with me? That's it. That's his criteria. Doesn't really care about anything else. He don't even care about their names. Like we'll go to the park. He'll play with a kid for like 2 hours. We'll come back and I'll be like, "Yeah, did you have fun?" "Yeah, Dad, it was a lot of fun. We ran around. We did this. We play hide and seek. We play." "Okay, cool." He's like, "Yeah, my friends, my friends, my friend." I'm like, "What's your friend's name?" "Well, I don't know." Like, you played 2 hours and you didn't even get their name. Did you introduce yourself? Did you tell him your name? No, I forgot. Like, all he cared about was playing. So for me, it's twofold. Number one, I just don't think that it's necessary to tell kids because their default at kids' age is to play with other kids. Kids can be mean. So I think the simple answer is just say, hey, look, if somebody is different than you, don't stare, don't be rude. Maybe one day he goes to school, maybe next year, like not this year, because we've already got the classmates already in class, but maybe next year he's in class and there's a kid that's in a wheelchair. Okay. Well, guess what? I'm not sitting down and trying to figure out, okay, what kind of people might my son come in contact with? Very simple. Be nice to everybody, you know, and if they're mean to you, then here are the steps that we'll take to deal with that. Now, how do I know that this is old? Well, as it turns out, because that was the big, because a lot of people, in fact, let's take a look at what some of the people were saying on social media about this issue, because I thought it was kind of interesting. So here are some of the comments, the quotes of that same Libs of TikTok post. So here we go. All right. So it's absolutely sick for anybody to push this toxic ideology on young children. That this is coming from a member of Congress is despicable. This is why the trans movement is failing. There is no room for live and let live. They force us all to choose sides. Okay. Let's see there we go. Look at who's sponsoring this indoctrination of little kids. The largest teachers union in America, NEA Today, that stands for the National Education Association, and the far left, quote, Human Rights Campaign. This is what Democrats and their radical groups stand for. This indoctrination to promote self-harm should be criminal. Hey, look, Robbie, I just want to point out, and he probably knows this, he's a major account, but I just want to point out the NEA has long been indoctrinating our kids. Remember Cat in the Hat, Dr. Seuss? Well, Read Across America was an event organized in celebration of Dr. Seuss. And in 29, I made a video about this, but in 2019, they convinced, no, I'm sorry, some scholar activists, described scholar activist, and they called themselves CRT activists, by the way. CRC. Okay, I am not doing so well on that. Let me start over. In 2019, self-described CRT scholar slash activist convinced the NEA to remove all of the Dr. Seuss books in favor of books that promote social justice. That actually happened. I don't know how many people know about that, but this is like all over the place. NEA does that. And I'm sure Robbie knows that already, right? But again, we're talking about, is this a current thing or not? Let's see what else we got. Is a man pretending to be a woman reading a book about a trans to young children grooming the kids? And by the way, can we stop putting an asterisk in on our words? Like either write the whole word or don't bother. But anyway, that's like okay, Nancy Mace. I don't like her. Not a big fan of her. You know, grooming the kids. Maybe that's what's going on. Like everybody wants to get to the children first, because if we can just get to the children, well, that's much easier than convincing adults. So I think there's part grooming, part laziness. It's intellectual laziness. I'll stick with convincing adults. I don't need to come after your kids with my ideas. If I can't convince an adult, then I need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what the hell it is that I'm saying that isn't so convincing. So I kind of agree with some of these comments, but I'm pointing out that this story is from 2019. So it's not even, it's like over 5 years old. What else we got here? It's beyond time to make grooming minors a felony. Okay, so first of all, I'm not a big fan of making felonies. I don't want to create more felons. Second of all, we can't even agree on what grooming actually is. So, like, until we have that conversation, no, we should not be having a conversation about making things a felony. Are you insane? Yes, this person is insane. Let's see what else. Who lets these perverted degenerates around little children? Let's see here. No, you cannot pick what you eat for dinner. You're only 8 years old. That would be silly, but sure, go ahead and make a life-altering decision that'll require lifelong medical intervention. It's a good point. Really is. If you look up the word grooming in the dictionary, this video pops up. Does anybody actually use a dictionary? Let's see. This is wrong, and the parents should be investigated. The teachers are already suspect, but if you allow your children to attend, you are the problem. That may be true that you are part of the problem if you're allowing children to attend things that they ought not attend. However, I am very hesitant to go and send CPS after parents to take away their children. We already have problems with that. No reason to add more problems to it. And when I say problems, go look up Spike Cohen. He talks a lot. He's had a lot of cases where his organization, You Are the Power, has uncovered where CPS or other entities have abused families and taken their children for no good reason. So there's no reason to add more of this. But there is a good reason for all of those people who are outraged to maybe be outraged that somebody is trying to stoke their outrage on something that happened in 2019 while it is 2025. So let's see. Let's take a look at a couple more images here, um, real quickly. So, how do I know this video is from 2019? Because I want to make sure that if I tell you something, I am right. Okay. If I'm going to take this big stand against YouTube and censorship and criticize other people, I ought to be right. So here's Sarah McBride's post from 2019. You can go look it up. I've got it in the show notes. She says the only way to empower the dreams of all kids is to build welcoming schools where every student is able to learn free from bullying. Well, good luck with that, Ms. McBride. Bullying has been around and will continue to be around, and schools have shown that they are the worst entities at dealing with it. That's a conversation for a different day. I think I've got a couple podcasts on bullying anyway. That's why HRC and Any Today, Jazz and Friends Day of Reading is so important. So young people can see that many allies have their backs. So again, these kids don't need to see that they have allies. They just need to have their peers not be mean to them. They're 5. They're like kindergarten and first grade. It's not really that hard. Don't be mean to people. Or as libertarians like to say, don't steal stuff, don't hurt people and don't steal their stuff. Don't hurt them physically, don't hurt them emotionally. Don't say mean things to them. That's what I'll be teaching my kid. So, all right. So then we look at so if you look at that picture, which is and I meant to mention this while we were watching the video, but you can see the outfit she's wearing. She's wearing this like grayish jacket. Okay. And that picture right there in the front, the top left, shows that she's wearing the same jacket as in the video with the same exact background. Okay. So there, let's see. Then we've got this picture here, which is a zoomed in of that. So there's the picture that she was wearing with the book, which was posted by her in 2019. So Libs of TikTok is just engagement farming because apparently they couldn't find anything else from her to talk about. Like, I don't know. How about where's my let me get this. Let me pull something up here because you might ask and say, DL, why are you making a big stink about this? It's no big deal. Well, how about since she was a senator? Let me see if I can pull that up. Where is it? Why is it being difficult here? Let's try there. There we go. So let me put this up on the screen here. So this is her senator page from Delaware General Assembly. Okay. Former Senator Sarah McBride, SD1. Okay. Let's go down. Hey, look, there's no sponsored legislation. Not for that year. But if we go back a year, because it's the new year. So if we go back, we can see that, hey, there's some legislation here to talk about. Why is it not? Okay. So all right, I'm doing my best. You may not be able to see it on the screen. I apologize. But it looks like last year she submitted some bills or co-sponsored or sponsored some bills. Why isn't Libs of TikTok talking about any of this stuff? Hmm? That could be important. This was last year. Let's see what we got here. Um, Designating October 9 to 16 as Dyspraxia Awareness Week. Not sure what dyspraxia is. I should have looked that up. Um, let's see. An act to amend Title 31 Delaware Code relating to a rental unit registry. Oh, you could have talked about registering your rental units. That could have been important. That's legislation that was submitted. I don't know whether it passed or not. Recognizing the month of June as Pride Month in the state of Delaware. You could have talked about that. That's important, right? Because that's legislation. That's something the government's doing. Reaffirming the long-standing sisterhood partnership between Delaware and Taiwan. You could have talked about that. The states don't really have any business worrying about other countries. Maybe assisting in a time of disaster at best, but otherwise, they don't need to do that. They don't need to. They don't. Hey, Taiwan, Delaware here. We're sisters. Really? But no, we want to stoke the flames of social discontent with 5-year-old videos. Here's one that Libs of TikTok would have loved it. Amend Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to providing medication, abortion, prescription drugs, and emergency contraception. Now, just based on her politics, I can assume where that's going. You could have talked about that. That's at least impacting the lives of every Delawarean, right? Like, because these would be laws if they got passed or resolutions. But no, 5-year-old videos of stuff that's already happened. And that's what we're gonna generate conversation about. And you might think, well, DL, you're just kind of making a big deal out of nothing. But I'm really not, if you think about it. We're having conversations about Doge right now and inefficiency of government and government spending. Well, guess what? What do you think legislation does? It spends money, it takes time and resources. So if you want a leaner government, talk about your damn government and what they're doing legislatively. That's an option. But no, 5-year-old videos. And look, Libs of TikTok, they're not lots of people do it. I've seen headlines where it's like a screenshot of the headline and conveniently the date's missing, and I go look it up, and I've seen them as old as like 2017 and earlier. And I'm like, "Really? You want me to get angry about a story that's, somewhere up to 10 years old? No, I'm not getting angry about something that happened 10 years ago. I'm not doing that." And it's funny because there's this big conversation on social media now, and I talked about it in a previous episode a few days ago about the woke right versus the woke left. Well, what is one of the we talked about I gave some definitions of it in that episode, and I said, here's some characteristics of it. One of the characteristics of being woke is to go back in history and dig up stuff to gin up outrage. That's what happens. That's why we saw people like, somebody's and we see it all the time, right? Somebody is trying to get a new position, and then all of a sudden something from 20 years ago is dug up conveniently. Like it never was talked about before, but all of a sudden now it's important. Oh, okay. Like, or somebody's tweets from like 5 years ago, they're starting to get popular or they have something cool happen to them. And then all of a sudden somebody's like, why'd you say the N word 5 years ago? And then they try to cancel them. Well, that's exactly what libs of TikTok is doing right now. They're engaging in that same behavior when instead they could be talking about the myriad upon myriad of things that are happening currently, today, legislatively, that they could say, hey, go be angry about this. Go yell at your senator about this or whoever your representative is. But no, 5-year-old videos. That's what we get. All right. What else we got? I was walking the dog this morning and I heard an interesting story about fires, about the fires in LA. And it was talking about drones and how, and it was just like this, like, I listened to like this 5-minute NPR clip and yeah, I get it. NPR, blah, blah, blah. But it makes for a nice podcast to listen to because it's like 5-minute chunks. So I don't have to get involved in a podcast and then come home, when the walk's over and I'm not finished with the podcast. So I get to listen to like, just some news nuggets. And they were talking about how officials in LA will be searching social media for drones to punish people. And at first I was kind of like, I recoiled and I was like, wait a minute, what? Why would you do that? Like you're already having a resource problem and now you're going to dedicate more resources to go and find people that were flying drones in the fire. So then I did some research and I found some interesting stuff that maybe you don't know that I didn't know. So I figured I would share it with you because I thought it was kind of interesting. So this is from The Hill, and this is actually this year. So I'm going to actually go back. I'm While I've been complaining about people digging up stories from the past, I'm actually going to talk about some stories from the past, but mine will be relevant, unlike theirs. So let's see what we got here. Let me pull this back up on the screen so that we can see. All right, so here it is from the Hill. Unauthorized drone flights doubling in Southern California, 3 arrested during LA fires. And at first I was just like, wow, you're arresting people? You're going to go after them? Like, why would you do that? So here are the bullet points. As fires continue to burn in LA, unauthorized drone flights have doubled. A drone collided with a super scooper aircraft, leaving a hole in the wing. 3 people have been arrested for 2 drone incidents. So now I'm perked up because I'm like, oh, wait a minute. What? Like, I didn't realize that, where's the article? California authorities say there have been at least 40 incidents in which unauthorized drones have forced firefighting aircraft to pause operations, putting more lives at risk as the fires continue to spread and firefighters on the ground are left without air support. Now I'm perked up because I'm like, well, wait a minute. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't realize that flying a drone over a fire was so critical to the mission at the time, or at that time that when it's happening, right? When they're trying to conduct missions and fight the fire, maybe rescue some people. I didn't realize they could actually cause the aircraft to go down, like well, maybe to go down, but more importantly, to say, hey, we have to suspend our operation because we've got drones that we're trying to manage around while we're trying to fight our fire. So here's this article from 2015 that I thought was very, very interesting. It comes from KQED. Firefighters could destroy nearby drones under a proposed state law. So it's a simple message from 2 state legislators to anyone who decides to fly a drone aircraft above a fire or other major emergency scene in California. Rescue crews should be able to destroy a remote controlled device. We don't imagine someone shooting it out of the sky, said Assemblyman Mike Gatto, one of the authors of the legislation. Yet the existing law is insufficient to provide law enforcement the clear authority to take it down. Gatto and State Senator Ted Gaines have teamed up on 2 pieces of drone related legislation. The first bill would increase fines and make possible jail time for a drone that interferes with firefighting efforts. The growing popularity of inexpensive remote-controlled planes equipped with video cameras has produced a number of thorny police questions and has been a hot topic of discussion at the state capitol for the past few years, most notably on concerns over privacy. So, by the way, this article is from 2015. But drones being flown into fire zones and other emergency response scenes have presented a more immediate danger, with the latest incident coming last week when a remote device forced air tankers to back off for 25 minutes in efforts to control a fast moving blaze. The rise in both incidents and criticisms has led state and federal fire officials to form a task force in search of ways to deal with the problem. We continue to see more and more incidents, said Daniel Berlant, public information officer from the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. We're going to be working to determine the specific impact that these hobby drones have had, the consequences that they had on those fires, and then how we can move forward to continue to enforce laws that currently exist. Senate Bill 168 would indemnify, that is, legally cover, any emergency personnel who would take action against someone's privately owned drone. The bill's authors believe that jamming technology may become available to simply keep the aircraft away. But the bill, if approved and signed into law, would also cover the destruction of a drone in order to allow crews to do their jobs. People can replace drones, but we cannot replace life, said Gaines in an emailed statement. When our rescuers are risking their own lives to protect us, I want them to think about safety, not liability. Here's the bill from California, 2015. Unfortunately, it failed. Now, I didn't read the bill. I'm not doing a bill review today, but I will say this. Of bills that I would support, that would be one of them on the basis of what we read. So I don't know the details of the bill. There might be some things that I would take issue with. But in general, if a firefighter is trying to do his job, his or her job, they're there to fight the fire, pull people out of fire, and someone else is creating a distraction that keeps them from doing their job, yes, punish them. Absolutely. That is a time for legislation. That is, and I totally support that. If you're flying in an aircraft, you're in a tanker, you're trying to take water and put out a fire that may take out homes that have people in them, right? Or just their homes without them, regardless. If you're trying to do that and and then you're trying to navigate around a drone that could maybe get caught in your engine or something else that could cause you to be in danger. That's a problem. So yeah, should they be able to destroy them? 100%. If you're fighting a fire, other people stay out, right? Like if you're I don't want firefighters dying because somebody wanted a picture or a video. That's not acceptable. So of the kind of legislation that I would support, which isn't very much, that would be one of them, right? Because we want our firefighters to do their job because their job is to protect people. Now, it's not quite like police, where the Supreme Court has ruled there's no duty to protect you. That's literally the firefighter's job. Their job, put out a fire, go rescue people. That's their job. If you put out the fire, property isn't damaged, people aren't killed. That's what they do. They protect people. That is literally their role. And we should make sure that if people are getting in their way, that there is that it comes at a cost. At a minimum, you lose your device because hey, I'm flying around, I'm looking for where I can pour this water out, and you got your stupid drone in my way. Yeah, whatever you got to do, take it out. Get it out of the way so that the firefighters, the emergency personnel, they can focus on doing what they do best, which is make us all glad that firefighters exist. That's what should happen. All right, let me get to some final comments and then we will close out for the day. So let's see here. I hope everyone that's watching has smashed that like button. You have to close the chat to see it under the title of the video. So takes if you're having trouble trying to like things, make sure you check the comments. That Liberty Lady has some instructions for you on how to make sure that you navigate the Rumble. Let's see what else. And don't forget to come back to the live stream after the chat feed disappears and leave a comment to make the algorithm dance. Yes, make sure that you like this. Come back later, throw me a like, throw me a comment, say, hey, DL, that was a great episode. Or maybe you got some critique. Throw it in the comments. I read them. I'll check it out. And if it's something that I agree with and I say, wow, it's a good point, then you can influence the show for a little bit of a freebie there. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure, as we said, that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel or my Rumble channel. You can go to youtube.libertydad.com or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. Again, while you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.